96683.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You and I both grew up in large cities with lots of lights.
Yes.
When I was a kid, though, we moved to a very rural area where there were no lights. And I looked up in the sky here in Florida, and I was amazed to see how many stars were actually up there, right? Mm-hmm. How many are really up there? And you don't even have a clue how many are up there. When you see images from the Hubble telescope that shows like this very, very small portion of the sky, and when they zoom in on that, even that has more stars than you normally see with your own eye, right? It is a really fascinating topic. I've always been fascinated with space exploration and everything that NASA stands for. Max Mutchler is on the phone, and I apologize if I mispronounced his name. He is with the Space Telescope Science Institute. He is a scientist at NASA, and he's on the phone, so it's an honor to say good morning to Max. Max Mutchler, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Am I saying your name correctly?
You nailed it, and it's kind of a tough one, so well done.
All right. Well, thank you. And where are you now?
You know, the institute I work at is in Baltimore, Maryland, but I happen to be visiting my sister in Wisconsin, where I'm from.
Oh, okay.
But I also have Florida connections. I graduated from Florida Tech over in Melbourne.
Oh, nice. And Robin has a Wisconsin connection. She's from Milwaukee, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the Hubble is such a fascinating telescope. Do we have images that are do you see stuff every single day, and do you guys get to look at them? And is there a new discovery every day? Maybe that's what I want to ask.
Yeah, I guess I can't say there's a new discovery every day, but we're certainly producing data, every minute of every day because, Hubble is orbiting in low Earth orbit, so we don't have clouds, we don't really have night and day. We do, it's just that we can always point the telescope, in a direction, where there's something visible. So we really utilize every minute of every day.
Okay, so my notes say that we want to talk about a new image of an interstellar comet, so I'm going to try to be smart. I'm going to guess that an interstellar comet is unusual. Am I right?
You're right, yeah. We're very excited about it.
Tell me about that. What is it?
Yeah, so, people are familiar with comets, but every comet you've ever heard of or seen before is one that's orbiting our sun, right? So our solar system is made up of planets, asteroids, and comets mostly, and they're all orbiting our sun in one way or another. The planets are mostly in circular orbits, and the asteroids as well. And the comets tend to be in these elliptical orbits because they're coming from the outskirts of the solar system. But this one is very fascinating because it's not a part of our solar system. It's the first comet ever seen that's actually coming from another star system. And we always thought that there must be comets and asteroids that have been flung out into interstellar space because we know that from the formation of our own sun, that the process of planet formation, there's a lot of debris left over, and that's comets and asteroids. And a lot of those gravitationally just get kicked out of the system, kind of, just ejected from the solar system. And so if our sun did that, we can assume that every other star out there has also ejected a bunch of comets and asteroids out into space, or, through the galaxy. And so we kind of assumed that there was stuff like this flying around out there, but nobody's ever seen one. Until 2 years ago, there was an object called Oumuamua, which looked like an asteroid. And so this is the second now object coming through our solar system. And we can tell it's just passing through because it's not on an elliptical or a circular orbit. It's on what we call a hyperbolic orbit, which means it's really just passing through. And so this is the second object and the first one, which is a comet.
Does the hyperbolic orbit that you just said, and I'm stumbling over the word because it's a new word for me, does that mean that our solar system, our sun, won't capture it? It won't become part of our solar system?
That's correct. It's just passing through, and the gravity of the sun will alter its trajectory a little bit because gravity is still working, but it's not going to be captured by the sun. It's not going to fall into orbit around the sun. So it is just passing through, which makes it exciting because the clock is ticking here. we only have a few more months to learn what we can learn from it before it will be long gone, forever. And so we just have this fleeting opportunity to learn what we can, and it'll tell us something about planet formation around other stars. It's almost like a message in a bottle from another star system telling us, are things the same there as they are here, or are they very different?
Do we know which other star it may have come from?
We have no idea. People are trying to figure that out. But just as I mentioned, as it passes our sun, it will change direction a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so this thing could have been out there for millions or even billions of years, and possibly passing by many stars just like our sun, and doing a left turn and then a right turn, and we have no idea how many left and right turns it's done. Wow. So I've been joking with people. It's sort of like seeing a fish in the water and then asking, where did that fish come from? You have no idea how many turns it's done.
Will this be able to be seen by people on Earth with their normal backyard telescopes, or do we have to go to an observatory?
Yeah, this one is actually pretty faint, and so this is not one of those comets where you can just go out in your backyard and see it. Even with a telescope, it's going to be tough. So I actually wouldn't recommend that. It's so faint, I think most people would just be disappointed. So I think, enjoying the pictures that we're getting from Hubble and other large telescopes, but one thing you could do, your best chance to see it for yourself, there are amateur astronomy clubs all over the U.S. I'm sure there's some in your area. And they generally have like open houses, once a month kind of thing, where you can go, and they have much better equipment than most people are going to have. And I'm sure they're on it. So if you really want to see it with your own eyes, I think your best chance is to seek out a local amateur astronomy club and look for their open house events.
And can a scientist tell what that comet is made up of as opposed to the other comets that are within our solar system?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's really what we're trying to figure out. With Hubble, we're trying to figure out how big the thing is, and it's looking like it's kind of small. It's not huge compared to other comets, and also doing spectroscopy. So my team is mainly doing imaging to try to understand the nucleus. There's other teams using Hubble to do spectroscopy where you can hopefully get some idea of what chemical elements are present. And so far from the observations that have been taken place, this comet looks a lot like comets from our solar system. Wow. So that's definitely one of the things we want to figure out is it made of the same ices that we see in the solar system, or could it be very different? Because if you think of all the other planets that have been discovered on other stars, they've been very different from our own solar system. So you might imagine that comets from those star systems might also be different. But interestingly, this one seems like it could belong right in the solar system. It looks pretty much like comets that are the comets from our own system so far.
Some of the more expensive backyard telescopes actually have a tracking software or whatever, so that, like, let's say you're zooming in on the moon, and it's going to stay in the picture, so that you don't have to worry about constantly adjusting it. Is that true for the Hubble too? How does it follow something like that? Is it controlled manually, or is there like a computer that stays on target when you tell it to?
Hubble has wonderful tracking and pointing capabilities, so this object is really moving quite fast for Hubble, but it's well within our range. So it is a challenge partly because the orbit isn't that well known. When something is newly discovered, the orbit is roughly known, but we need to know it well enough to get it into our small camera aperture. Right. And we have, but it's interesting how it hasn't always been exactly where we thought it was going to be. And that could be just due to small errors in the orbit estimation, but also we believe that the nucleus is small enough that as cometary activity begins, gas and dust come shooting off the surface, kind of like a jet. And so you can imagine that's like having a jetpack on, so now it's not just gravitational forces dictating its path, but these little extra jet forces pushing it off course a little bit. And so we suspect that might be happening. And that's an indication that it's kind of on the small side, because if it was bigger, those jets wouldn't have much of an effect.
Oh, wow. It's so fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. Can we see pictures online, for example, of this comet that have been taken by the Hubble?
Yes, we did our first observation on October 12th, and so that image has been out there for a while. And then today we're releasing 2 more images. One we took in November, which is kind of cool because there happened to be a galaxy, sitting right next to the comet in the background, way in the background. Wow. And then we have another image that we took just on Monday, on December 9th. and that's our most recent one. And that one we were kind of excited about because the comet right now is as close to the sun as it's ever going to get. And, that's generally it's getting heated by the sun, and that's generally when you're going to have the most activity. So if anything spectacular is going to happen, like if it's going to flare up, or sometimes comets even break apart because they can be quite fragile.
Wow.
It might happen around now.
That is amazing.
So far we're not seeing anything like that, but we're going to have several more months to monitor this, and this comet doesn't really get that close to the sun. It's about as far away as Mars, and as you know, Mars is quite cold, so it's not really getting, some comets get very close to the sun and they really get heated up. This one is experiencing more heat than it normally does from being out in interstellar space, but it's pretty far from the sun still.
That's so cool. Usually when we do these interviews, later on somebody will say to us, who did you talk to today? And I'm going to say, well, I talked to a NASA scientist, and he told me that a galaxy actually photobombed a comet.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Matt,
yeah, well...
Go ahead.
The comet is moving really fast, and in October we released actually a movie. So we took a series of frames over 7 hours so we could make a little movie, and you'll see that online. So you'll see lots of stars and galaxies whizzing by in the background, and it gives you a sense of how fast the comet is moving.
That is so awesome. Is that at NASA.gov?
Yes, you can find it on NASA.gov, and there's also HubbleSite.org.
Okay, Hubble?
Site, S-I-T-E.
Okay, HubbleSite.org? Okay. Max, have a great holiday season. Thank you for all the work you do and for taking time to talk to us.
My pleasure. You have a great holiday season yourself.
Thank you. All right, we'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Jean Powell, Past Chamoy. Jean and Debbie thank you for another successful year and to wish you peace, love, and